Hello, this is Paul Isaac speaking for the Autism Information channel, and this is my 25th video, and this video is going to be about autism and stimming. Now I'm going to separate this sort of video into chunks about the different reasons why autistic people stim. I'm going to start with the first one, which is communication. With communication, with some people on the autistic spectrum, some when verbal information is being processed, when an autistic person is being given an instruction, being talked at or talked to, certain things may help the autistic person process the sounds and language that is coming towards them. So, for example, I've seen a young man when you use verbal information, he will start, for example, he'll start flicking a book, you know, like this, just flicking the book, making a noise, or he'll start stimming like this with a humming noise as well, accompanying the stim, as a way of processing the verbal information. So there's a genuine neurological reason why that behaviour is being displayed. Sometimes it can look like the person is being ignorant or non-compliant, but actually what's happening by sometimes not using eye contact, by actually not directly looking at the person and using from an observational point of view these unusual sort of stereotypies and unusual stims, is actually a way of the individual, the autistic individual, actually gaining a better understanding, a more clear understanding of what is being said to them. So hopefully that gives an example of one reason why autistic people stim. From a personal perspective, in terms, it's not necessarily stimming, but I find it much more comfortable if someone talks to me in a very sort of direct manner, not using lots of long sentences, you know, very clipped and precise. Sometimes I actually hear the person better when I'm not looking at them. I find when I actually use eye contact that I actually forget the words that they're saying. And also, again, it may look like I'm being non-compliant and ignorant, but actually I'm actually getting a better clarity of what someone is saying if I'm not directly looking at them, maybe seemingly focusing on something else. But you know, again, it's an observational point of view, and you know, it helps to understand the mechanics of what is sometimes going on behind these stimming behaviours. The next reason why an autistic person may stim is because of sensory stimuli and how they perceive the world visually. I'm not a visual thinker from a personal perspective. I have real problems with actually focusing and actually getting sometimes what I'm seeing. I've done a previous video about that. It's called agnosia, object blindness, so please take a look at that video. But in the context of stimming, in a visual environment, autistic people can get very distracted or mesmerised by certain things, certain colours, certain textures, certain lights. Goodness me, there's so many things I could go through which distract me in a room. It's not always painful. Sometimes I like it so much that I get just focused in onto that particular colour, particular light. If it's spinning, I like spinning things, twiddly sort of things with lots of colour. I like stuff like that. So, you know, again, what is the autistic person getting out of that? For people who like it, for autistic people who like all that sort of sensory behaviour, start rocking and moving in sometimes a very rhythmic sort of manner, yes, the autistic person is getting some enjoyment out of actually doing this, getting a positive sensory experience or feeling that is very positive. It's a feel good feeling, and I can vouch for that from a personal point of view, that there is this sort of feeling of clarity within one's own world. And some autistic people don't need necessarily that direct contact of someone else being in their world. They just may be sort of very fixed on certain things which make them feel a part of the world, and there's not a problem with being alone, and it's not an issue. Sometimes aloneness is characterised as being very negative, but sometimes if you can just home in onto the colours or the sights or the textures and just being in your own world, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So then that may again bring out stimming behaviours. Another reason why people may display unusual behaviours, because of the visual side of things, if they're object blind or meaning blind, they may have to do certain behaviours to actually map out where they are, where they fit in the world, where they fit in a room, where they fit in with all these people and all these objects in the room. So when I was younger, I can remember my mum looking out the window one day when I was 3 years old, and I had a house on my head. It was a cloth house with a sort of flimsy plastic or wood frame. I didn't have any concept of it being a house. All I knew is that it felt very, very lovely on the top of my head because it was made out of this certain texture, this certain fabric. I don't know if it was felt or some fabric. I liked the sensation on my head. It was very unusual to watch, but to actually gain some sort of meaning out of that, I'd have to sort of look at it in a different way. So I noticed the students that I work with, some of them are like that, a lot of sort of touching, not quite knowing where they are. There's a peripheral vision, sort of looking out the corner of their eye, and again the stimming as well, the rocking, the pacing. It could be a way of them mapping out where they are in a room, where they are outside, where they are in contingency and with other people, with objects. What is that object? A lot of questions are being answered through sensory exploration, which would include stimming as well. So that's another aspect to stimming, that it's a way of gaining information. Stimming can also be used, from my perspective, as a release. Where I work, there's a lot of sort of verbal interaction, there's a lot of social interaction, there's a lot of layers to my work. So a way of relief, here's the other side. So you've got communication, you've got sensory and visual stimuli, and now from a personal perspective, it's a release. So it's a release. For example, when I come home, I like to experience sensory stimuli I've been talking about. One of my favourite objects, it's over there I think, is this wand which I got from this store, and it's got these colours, and you switch it on and it whirls. Almost hit my nose there. It whirls round and round and round and round and round, and I can watch that for ages and ages and completely be mesmerised by this thing, which is just creating a sense of oneness and joy, which I love. And also this thing here, I love the texture of this thing. I got this thing very, very long time ago, but again, it's the feel of it, it's the texture, it's you know, it feels nice. You know, I'm getting something from this. And another thing I've got, just as I'm talking, is this thing here with all these colours, and I can twang this for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages and ages and ages, and I'm getting fixed now because it's just releasing something which I'm getting almost instantaneously, because it's so this is really, this thing never changes. This will always be there for me, and it will always give me the same buzz, the same feeling of oneness and comfort, especially if I've had a stressful day. It's like a friend in a way. It never lets me down, it never judges, it never excludes me, it's always there, and it's a comfort. A colleague I work with once said that, you know, being a neurotypical, she's missing out on some of these sensory experiences that a lot of autistic people are getting. So again, these stimming behaviours, they have a reason. They're not just, you know, there is a neurological reason why someone stims. And one of my bits of advice I'll give to any teacher, any LSA, would be, and as a learning support assistant, don't stop stimming. Do not stop stimming. It's actually a way of communication, and it's a way, in some ways, a way of the autistic person being free and being themselves. So I feel it's a great benefit to understand why an autistic person stims from the inside, because a lot of it is to do with communication, mapping out visual sort of space, ergonomics, meaning for some autistics, and it can be a way of release. It's got lots and lots of reasons. There's more than one reason why an autistic stims, and every autistic is different, so there's always going to be different mechanics to why a person with autism stims. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, because I've certainly enjoyed it, showing you some of the things I like. Thank you very much for listening.